Welcome to Built for This, the podcast where purpose meets performance. Hosted by business strategist and human behavior specialist Carly Pepin, this show dives into the real stories behind high-growth businesses. Let's bring life to your vision.
Hey guys, so welcome back. I'm really excited for today. I have Kaitlyn Albertoli with me, and she is the co-founder and CEO of Buzz Solutions, an AI company helping power utilities modernize infrastructure inspections to strengthen grid safety, reliability, and resilience. Since co-founding the company in 2017, she has led the company's growth and product strategy, driving the deployment of AI-powered visual inspection technology across transmission, distribution, and substation assets. She has been recognized on Forbes 30 Under 30 and San Francisco Business Times 40 Under 40, and is a frequent author and speaker on AI, sustainability, and the future of critical energy infrastructure. So welcome, Kaitlyn. It's awesome to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and so everyone knows what we're talking about. I'd love for you to just give us a little brief overview of more about what Buzz Solutions is. I'm from Southern California, so I absolutely love what you're doing. Yeah, which everyone will find out why soon.
Yeah. I am also from Southern California, and unfortunately I experienced several of my friends who were evacuated due to wildfire risk growing up, and I had several friends who unfortunately lost their homes due to wildfires across Southern California. I mean, that was one of my early interests in the energy and sustainability space. I also watched the nuclear power plant, the San Onofre nuclear power plant, being shut down during some of my formative years as well, which had significant economic impacts and then also had impacts on generation. And that facility was shut down due to the exorbitant costs of unexpected maintenance required on the nuclear power facility. And so some of those were my early interests in getting involved in the energy and sustainability ecosystem. We actually launched Buzz Solutions from a Launchpad course at Stanford University. That's where my co-founder Vic and I met, and we shared mutual interest amongst the energy space and what was happening around maintenance and inspections. And so we ended up launching Buzz to help solve the massive problem happening in the critical infrastructure space, really of data. I mean, there's so much data that's being collected in this space today. But historically, the process of managing assets, conducting maintenance has been highly reactive. And so we work with all of these large visual data sets to down into quick and actionable insights so that utilities can move from a world of being reactive to all of the assets failing, but more to proactive and predictive in their approach so that they can understand where and when they need to maintain their critical physical infrastructure.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That was perfect. And I'm curious as well, because I know you mentioned that you started this based out of a Stanford class, but you had this opportunity to interview all of the investor-owned utilities. So when you had those conversations, what were you actually uncovering? It's a great opportunity during basically talking to your niche.
Yeah, it was a really interesting time. We ended up interviewing 35 of the largest investor-owned utilities in the country, and those are utilities across all different geographies, across all different even sizes as well. And what was really interesting is they all had the exact same narrative. They were starting to do a lot more inspections of their infrastructure. They were using drones, helicopters, fixed-wing aircrafts, ground-based data. Oftentimes, they were using a mix of all of those sources, but they still had an entirely manual process after the data was collected. So they were going from collecting hundreds and maybe thousands of images of their infrastructure per year to hundreds of thousands and millions of images. Even some of our customers today are collecting tens of millions of images per year. But the entire process of analyzing that data and turning it from raw visual data into prioritized insights was entirely manual. And so after about conversation, I don't know, 15 or 20, we said, it's one of those, there has to be a better way. That was exactly the conversation we had. And I remember we were sitting in the office of a major utility, and they said, it's only a matter of time before you're into sort of a critical issue. Either there's going to be a major outage or we're going to get behind on our maintenance, or there's going to be some sort of massive fire, or some issue that's going to happen because we can't act fast enough. We don't have the people, we don't have the resources to turn all of this data into actionable information. And just to provide context in that same conversation, they said from the time we collect an image to the time we're able to do something about it is more than 6 months. They said that's only going to get worse with time. And as you know, you wait 6 months, there could be something critical that happens in that time duration. A line could go down, an outage could spark, some other risk factor. And that was just something they couldn't live with any longer. And so they said, if you can launch a company and provide a solution to that specific problem, we would love to try it out.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I'm curious as well because how long did it actually take you guys to create this product?
So that's something that's quite interesting. I mean, in the world of AI and automation today, you would have thought it would have been really quick to stand up an AI platform. But it actually took us about 3 years just to work alongside major utilities, to work alongside research organizations, and to collect enough proprietary data sets that would allow us to train our algorithms to deploy with a high degree of accuracy in the space. To provide context, utility data is critical infrastructure data, so it's incredibly proprietary. Getting access to it is very difficult. Utilities used to actually mail us boxes of physical data sets when they were sending us data originally. That plus in this space, there's not a standard means of collecting data, meaning utilities are using a mix of all these different sources that I talked about: helicopters, drones, ground based, fixed wing, static cameras, and all that data is collected slightly differently. And so training algorithms that can converge on all these different means of non standard data is very difficult. The last piece of it, too, is it's a very niche, and there's a lot of subject matter expertise that goes into the types of detections that we're providing. So we recognized through our conversations and through our need finding with utilities that if we were going to deploy a product, we needed to have pre-trained algorithms that could show up and deliver value on day one. But training an algorithm to detect cross-arm splitting or insulator flashing or insulator contamination, there's a lot of nuance that goes into it. And so we actually worked with more than 50 utilities across different geographies to understand how would they classify these different asset inventoryings, and then also the condition assessment. And then we work with research institutes to be able to get a true sense of how we would classify, label, detect some of those different defects so that we could build the platform in the most comprehensive way. So it actually took us about 3 years before we commercially deployed.
That's awesome. I'm curious to like during those 3 years, what would you say the company looked like just crew wise? Was it just you and your partner Vic, or did you guys have other people helping you out?
It was very small. We secured a grant for innovation transfer. It was actually Tom Steyer's grant at Stanford. It was called the Tomcat Grant. And that was our first funding. It helped us build the MVP, train the algorithms, and then it also helped us hire some interns. So it was a very small, lean team until we commercialized. It was just my co-founder Vic and I, and several interns who helped us build out the product.
That's awesome. And did you guys do self-funding? Did you wind up getting an investor? What did that look like once you really launched it?
We did. Yeah. We ended up raising venture capital once we commercially launched, and have raised a couple venture rounds since then. I mean, when we were looking for venture partners, it was important for us to find those who understood the space, understood utilities, and also understood the intersection of innovative technology in a historically more traditional sector. And so that's been quite valuable for us as we've grown the business.
That's cool. I'm curious too, because it sounds like this was a really big pain point for utility companies, but was there any trouble like merging into this industry because they've just been doing it a different way for so long?
Yes, absolutely. The utility industry is a very unique one, and rightfully so. There's a lot of regulations, regulatory requirements, unique attributes that the utility space has. I mean, you look at the sector, it's been around for more than 100 years. Often many of these utility companies have been around for about that long. And many of our customers have been operating their inspection and maintenance practice the same way for decades. So when you're coming in with a very innovative, technologically advanced, excuse me, solution, the learning curve is going to be quite steep. But same thing through our early conversations and the discovery with the utilities, we recognize that two things. One, as I mentioned before, when we deployed our solution, we needed to show up and deliver value on day one. That was going to help us get early adoption. The second thing was we needed a solution not only to have highly accurate algorithms or a cool looking platform, but it needed to deploy directly into the utility workflow. And what
Mhm.
that means is our solution integrates with the major platforms that these utilities have been using for the better part of 20, 30, 40 years. And so we're just providing now the enhanced insights and more informed, data driven decision making insights directly into those major systems. So we're replacing the repetitive, mundane task of data analysis and also the manual data entry piece. But at the end of the day, we're still giving the subject matter expert the ability to make the final decision. They're just seeing it in a platform and a tool that they're already comfortable with and that they've already been, used to working with for a longer period of time.
That's cool. It's interesting too because it just sounds like you guys are saving so much time, so
Mhm.
much energy, and how many people used to process this level of data? Because as you said, it could take 6 months at
Sure.
some points. Yeah, and that sounds like a lot of individuals processing data that now it's just kind of replaced by the system.
Mhm. The problem is the problem is multifold there.
Mhm,
So utilities don't have tens of people who are just waiting around to analyze data. That's
mhm,
historically not been the structure. I mean, historically, as I mentioned, they weren't collecting millions of images. So this has been a rapid uptick that's happened over the course of just a couple of years, a very short order of time. And today, many of the folks who are analyzing the data manually are actually
mhm.
not meant to be data labelers. They are highly skilled linemen, field technicians, engineers who have been doing this work for 20, 30, 40 years. Their work is meant to make more prioritized, informed decisions to help optimize where truck rolls are sent and to also help conduct maintenance. So when you're asking them to do this very repetitive data analytics task, that's not where they're meant to be served,
Hmm.
compounded with the fact that the industry today is plagued with huge labor shortages. So, just to provide context in numbers, by 2030, this industry, just with linemen and field technicians, is expected to see an 80,000 person labor gap,
Oh, wow.
growing by about 20,000 people gap per year. And the work is only continuing to compound as the grid continues to age, as there's more load,
Mhm.
stress, strain posed on our physical grid. There's more work than ever that needs to be done. But yet we're finding ourselves at this critical point of a labor shortage. And so a solution like ours is helping take all this data, synthesize it down, and then help those highly skilled folks be able to make more informed decisions. On average, our last, couple customers we've been working with, they're collecting to the tune of 4, 5, 6 million images a year, and they may only have 4, 6, 8 people responsible for data analysis. So if you can imagine, it's a huge bottleneck for them as they're trying to scale some of these inspection programs.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm curious too. So, I know that so much of this has gone in just from the initial conversation of like what is lacking within these utility companies. So, as you guys have continued to grow the product, build the product, do you still reach out to them to see what the needs are? Are you guys kind of innovating, coming up with some ideas on your own? What does that look like as you start to shift and innovate within this product?
Absolutely. Well, first off, all of our innovation today is customer driven. We recognize that it's very important for us to stay aligned with the customer's biggest pain points and needs in the industry. And as I mentioned, that was our founding story. We were founded based off utility feedback, subject matter expertise, insights. And so we recognize in order to keep innovating, it's going to be customer driven. So we've actually are just standing up both a customer advisory board and also a user group to help continue to provide feedback and drive new innovation. We most recently launched a solar product or a solar module within our platform, and that solar module was entirely customer driven. Many of our longer term, larger utility customers are also responsible. Their inspection teams are also responsible for inspecting their solar infrastructure. And so because they're responsible for inspecting the solar infrastructure, they'd like to use the same platform to be able to help solve that analysis piece as well. So we spent the better part of 18 months working very closely with those folks on the inspection side and on the solar side to understand what their pain points are, to understand how they're going about that inspection and analysis process, and then ultimately to ultimately build a version of that module as well to help support the solar inspections.
Hey everyone, it's Carly. If you're really resonating with what we're talking about and want to get clear on what truly drives you, what your core values are, head on over to my website. In the tools and tips section, there is a free values assessment. And this is a quick exercise that's going to help you to uncover what actually matters most with you so you can lead and live with more clarity, fulfillment, and momentum. Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm curious too, because I know when you guys started, you said you had just you two, you and Vic, and then the interns. What does your company look like today in regards to employees, leadership?
We're just shy of 50 people today. It's been a
Exciting.
really exciting journey, and it's really inspirational just to see how many folks are excited to come join the Buzz team because we're, pairing really advanced, exciting AI technology alongside a really impactful, product that we're able to deliver that creates real value, not only for our customers, but for all of their customers that they serve as well. And so being able to have so many folks involved on the team that are so uniquely passionate about it has been really exciting. We've been building our team in a variety of different sectors. So building our sales team, growing our sales and marketing effort, continuing to build our engineering team. And then we've also been more recently expanding our customer success and customer support departments because, again, utilities and our customer base are at the center of everything we do. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping them top of mind as well.
That's very cool. And I'm curious too, do you guys work remote or are you guys in office?
We are a remote team. Being remote has been really helpful for us. First, our customers are all across different geographies and time zones. And so being able to have pockets of our team that are there to support each of those utility customers across different time zones has been really helpful for us. It's allowed us to stay a lean and strong and powerful team while ultimately serving the variety of utilities we do across the country. We actually used to have an office space up until the pandemic, and then the pandemic, of course, we ended up going fully remote. But aside from being able to support our utility customers, it also unlocked the ability for us to find amazing pools of talent across the country. And so, from an
Mhm.
engineering standpoint, we've been able to find so many true innovators across different time zones that while the Bay Area is known for so much innovation, it was really exciting for us to be able to open the doors to many other pockets of talent. And so today, our biggest hub is actually in Denver. Our Denver team is very passionate and proud, and they get together regularly and meet up and have a really strong culture there. So it's been cool to just see how we can unlock different pockets of talent and be able to grow the buzz sphere in so many different places.
That's really cool. That's very cool. I love that they're like naturally getting together too, where you don't even have to get involved.
Yeah,
It's
I
really
think
cool.
that's important to continue to foster like the team culture as well, is to make sure that you're even in the remote worlds creating a space for them to collaborate and innovate and get to know each other across departments.
That's cool. I'm curious as well, like when you think about that culture and just creating that dynamic of keeping people connected, how do you guys enable staying connected while you're working far apart?
Yeah, great question. And it's something that we talk about regularly here at Buzz. We do a once a year big all team meetup. So it's actually coming up next month. We're very excited about it. It will be in Denver. The Denver team's really excited about that. But I would say creating the right culture requires a lot of intention. I mean, we spend a ton of time talking about how can we create and foster cross department collaboration in a way that people are excited to do it, where it doesn't feel forced. So we've done things like lunch and learns that are a regular part of our practice. It's every other Friday, someone on the business side, someone on the engineering side presenting a cool win or something that they're focusing on. So it gives other departments visibility. Our sports world is very popular. So we do the March Madness, the fantasy football, and being able to pair people who wouldn't typically work together has been one way that we've continued to be intentional about the way that we're trying to create that cross department collaboration. And then it's also things like regular meetups, even as I mentioned, the ones in Denver or in different hubs. And so that's been helpful to give people a way to connect outside of just the work, but among something else that they're passionate about outside of just their day job.
It's fun. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I'm curious too, so when you think about what you guys are focused on now, like quarterly goals, yearly goals, what part of the business would you say that you're most focused on as you're growing it?
That's an interesting question. I think that we're focusing on them all in different ways with different
Hmm.
time horizons. So for example, we're very quickly growing and scaling our sales team right now because there is a certain time of year that it is the active time of year for utilities to evaluate new solutions, for them to run RFPs, for them to evaluate new technologies, to bring them into the fold and get them kickstarted. So making sure that we have, the right people in place and the right resourcing is a very cyclical time of year importance for us. But then it's also long term on the engineering side. How are we thinking about our product roadmap? How are we continuing to move and shift our product roadmap in accordance for what our customers are asking for? And that can, change oftentimes, somewhat frequently based off what are the biggest pain points for our end customer. To provide an example, when there's a critical storm season, oftentimes we'll see a lot more requests for different functionality on our platform that comes as a result of those critical storms. We'll also see when it's wildfire season that there's a lot of preventative measures utilities are looking to put in place, and there's a short time frame they have to inspect, analyze, and take action on that critical infrastructure. And so, we have to be nimble. Even as a company of our size, we have to be nimble to adjust to some of those big customer demands. Again, that's, one of the reasons that our user group and our advisory boards are so important for us. So I know it's maybe not a direct answer to the question, but I feel like depending on time of year and depending on some of the biggest customer requirements, it could change.
Well, it's really interesting too, because I'm curious, like, as you're saying that, so when you have a particular customer and they're like, well, we have the wildfires and we want this for preventative measures. So are you guys having to develop very quickly, kind of on the spot in essence? Or do you have more
Yes.
time?
We have an
Mhm.
evaluation rubric for how we intake new
Yeah.
requests, functionality, feature requirements, those types of things. But if we're seeing a concentration of many of our customers or utility partners asking for this specific type of functionality, then we'll reprioritize accordingly, based off the urgency of the request or the pain point that may arise. So again, it's different by the request, but really it's, we're trying to find a concentration of our customers that are needing a similar type of solution, or we're trying to evaluate what the pain point is and what the driver is for the ask as well.
Yeah, and I'm curious too, when you guys are integrating like these new asks, these new, small things in the system, is there an average amount of time it takes to create it?
No, it's all over the board.
Yeah.
It really depends on the complexity of what's being asked of us, whether it's a small feature or a new model or it's a new workflow integration. It really could look differently and it could range. And that's a big part of the scoping conversation that we have so that we understand, okay, what are the commonalities amongst the utilities that need this solution and how can we build it most efficiently?
Okay, that's cool. It seems like it would keep it very energized, like the dynamic for development and sales and marketing and kind of learning about all of this on a regular basis.
Sure, it requires a very close
Mm.
partnership between our sales, our solutions engineers, our engineering team, project management to make sure that we're all aligned because
Um,
these customers we're serving are such large enterprises. And so we want to make sure that when we are building a new feature, we're thinking about all the different edge cases or ways that utilities would leverage this tool or would leverage this integration or would leverage this model. And we want to make sure we're taking those into account so that we're also building something that's scalable. It's not just for this one specific use case, but how can we make sure it's a scalable offering that can be deployed repeatably, and it serves the longer term as well.
Cool. I'm curious too, because this seems like it was such a huge gap in the market. Simultaneously, it also feels like one of the investments that it's just like a common sense investment. Again, I come from Southern California with fires everywhere. I'm like, of course I want this. Um, when you approach these companies, are there any roadblocks that you guys are coming up against for utility companies that may not want to integrate it?
I don't think it's a matter of want as much as it's a technical readiness question. I mean,
Got it.
that's the conversation we're having most regularly. For example, data sharing is a big hurdle for some utilities. We are seeing many utilities stand up these new data governance teams and AI evaluation teams, which we think is a great advancement because at least it sets a standard for how a utility is going to evaluate, they're going to process, they're going to systematize something like an AI solution. Historically, that's been a bit more challenging. So, our first utility that we worked with, it took us many, many months to get access to their first data sets. They wanted the solution, they had the budget, they were ready, they had the pain point, they wanted to deploy this, but they couldn't get us access to the data. And so they've now heavily shifted over the course of time because there's been such a need to adopt technology across the board. It's not just our
Mhm.
solution, but there are so many different parts of the utility industry today that are seeing this technology revolution in a way, or there's so many different technologies that are being implemented. So the ability to stand up a central AI data governance team at least allowed a consistent path for evaluation. That in turn can help. Yes, it's an extra step, but it also can help streamline the overall process of bringing and implementing a solution the right way. Um, so I'd say that's one of the hurdles is getting the technical readiness piece in place. And I think secondarily it's also the change management piece. We see that there is a lot of interest now in adopting these types of solutions, but there's still a little bit of hesitancy and or maybe yeah, I think hesitancy is probably the right word. And how can we best bring a solution like this into the fold? How do we track the ROI? How do we scale it? How do we implement it amongst our other platforms? And so we spend a lot of time in the education world about
Mhm.
what does AI do? Where does it fit? What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses? How do we overcome those weaknesses? How can we work collaboratively to, again, build a more comprehensive system that's going to be scalable over time?
Wow, that's awesome. I'm curious as well, even the dynamic of the roadmap, right? So you guys have a roadmap, so we've kind of understood what you're focused on now, but how far ahead do you actually plan?
We plan far in advance. I mean, we have a multi-year product roadmap and a vision, I guess you would say, of the art
Mhm.
of the possible or where we want to go from an overall vision standpoint. When it actually comes to rubber meets the road, a lot of the next couple of quarters of work can shift around, kind of like building blocks. It kind of moves a little bit quarter to quarter. I'd say the fortunate thing in the utility space is many utilities plan multiple years in advance. So they're planning the next 3 or 5 years from now. And so we have the fortune of being able to understand what they're thinking about 3 or 5 years from now. And we can help them craft that vision of where a solution like ours fits into that. And then we work backwards from there. That said, as I was saying, priorities and prioritization can shift quarter to quarter. And so that's where we spend a lot of our time manipulating the roadmap is what's going to be an important work for us to bring in today versus what can wait 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. An example of that is we have a specific type of sensor data that we've had in our roadmap for a while, helps with vegetation and tracking vegetation encroachment. We've been waiting for a couple utilities to stand up and say, this is a core pain point that I need a solution for right now. A lot of utilities we're working with still have it on their roadmap a couple quarters from now. And so we keep that as something that we keep that conversation going with utilities saying, how much of a priority is this for you? When do you anticipate bringing this sensor into your traditional inspections or into your standard inspections, excuse me? And where is our solution going to provide value in that way? By continually having that conversation, it allows us to keep it on our couple quarters out roadmap, but then we have the ability to pull it in as needed because we're oftentimes refining what that pain point looks like, how a utility would implement it, and where our solution could provide the most value if we bring in that additional sensor data.
That's cool. And so it also sounds like you guys have a lot of individuals who work for you that are really kind of maybe experts in the utility field. So what does that look like within the company? Because the way that you're describing it, you're also thinking like the utility company as you create the products for the utility companies.
That's been something that's been very important to us since day one. Is we often say we're a company built by utilities for utilities. As I said, keeping the customer at the front focal point for us has really helped us as we've gotten our first wins with customers, as we've scaled our solution, as we continue to evolve the roadmap, new products we roll out, those types of things. But it's also important that we have folks in-house who identify with the utility pain points and have experienced those, understand it, have maybe sat in their shoes before. As I mentioned, many people in the utility space, have worked for the utility for 20, 30, 40 years. And so being able to have folks on our team that have sat in those shoes has been really helpful. So many of our customer facing project managers, solutions engineers, and such, and even customer success have deep experience working alongside utilities as contractors or sitting within the utility themselves. And so that's been really helpful. And then on the business development and sales side of things, many of our folks have 10, 15, 20 years of deep utility domain expertise specifically. And that's also helped us, again, as we're solution crafting with the utility. When we are selling into utility, we're not a point solution. We don't just sell a software and walk away. We're meant to be a partner that continues to evolve, iterate, and grow alongside our customer base. So oftentimes we say our utilities are really our partners, and we want to make sure that when they're signing up with Buzz, they know that we're here to partner with them along the way.
That's cool. I'm curious as well. So when you first started in the utility dynamic, were you guys only focused on one type of utility, or were you able to dive into all the different types?
Yeah, so we started with the investor-owned utilities and large utilities more broadly on their transmission, which is the high voltage steel towers that you typically see kind of in more rural areas. They're the long range, high voltage assets. And distribution, which is the wooden poles you oftentimes see in the cities themselves. So we started with transmission distribution as our first two asset types. The reason we started with, as they're called, the power delivery or linear assets, is because that's where utilities were really scaling their inspection programs. We were seeing that was the fastest scaling that they were seeing. They were moving from inspecting that infrastructure once every 5 years to every 3 years, and now some are even inspecting it every year. So there's just a huge growth happening on the inspection side. So we started there. And then about 2 years in, we started to have a lot of utilities ask us to monitor their substation infrastructure, which is the infrastructure that steps up and steps down power. And those are facilities that need a lot more monitoring, not only for the equipment, but also for things like security and safety of those facilities, for copper theft and substation shootings and transformer overheating, those types of things. So we ended up expanding our product into the substation world. And then, as I mentioned, we've more recently branched into solar. But what's interesting is we've now expanded to utilities of different sizes as well. So it's not just the largest utilities, but we're also serving some of the public power organizations, the medium and smaller utilities, which may be cooperatively owned or they may be city owned as well. Those organizations, they may not have the huge, overwhelming volume of data because they're much smaller, but what they may have is they may only have one lineman who's been in the seat for 40 years and
Hmm.
wants to retire. And the next person coming in after them is someone right out of trade school, maybe in their 20s, and doesn't have any knowledge of the history of how the assets have been maintained. And so
Hmm.
when that person retires, all the asset history knowledge is retiring with them. And so we serve as a knowledge transfer hub for the lineman who's been there for so long, and then the new person coming in. So it's our same platform, our same products, the same models, but the way in which they see the value from the solution is slightly different.
That's really interesting. And so like the lineman dynamic where I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. It's like someone fresh comes in is and they don't have the same level of data. When you get the data from someone like that from a smaller company, what does that data actually look like?
Could look like a couple things. It could be
Yeah.
images. It could be Excel reports. It could be PDF reports. It could be notes. It looks a variety of different ways based off the utilities technology stack.
Yeah.
And so we're also like a common slogan that we have here at Buzz is we'll meet you where you're at. Like we want to meet you where you are today. Our long-term vision is to help you build the scalable inspection proactive maintenance program of the future where it's all condition based, it's all proactive, it's we're moving them into more informed, prioritized, data driven decisions, but we're oftentimes meeting them where they're at today, which oftentimes can look like a asset inventorying. What do you have? Where are your poles located? What's deployed on those poles? What's the health of those poles? What is the where do you have defects deployed, or where do you have defects on those assets? And then we'll help take in all of the historical data they've collected, again, in any of those different forms. And then we'll help them map that to the assets and then provide them, a trend analysis over time so that they can have all of that data stored centrally. And then every inspection going forward is locked in the same place, same location, and they can continue to iterate over time.
And I'm imagining just based off of the size would just kind of go by how long it takes to integrate this data. But I'm wondering if there's just like an estimate of how long it actually takes to integrate it, because it sounds like you guys, it's a lot of detail. And I don't know, so I'm just visualizing some of these smaller companies. Some people will still like handwrite stuff. Like I've worked with companies where they're super old school and like the accountant's old school and they're just handwriting ledgers and
Yeah.
like, we're like an eight-figure company. We need to get you in QuickBooks or something. Like,
Sure.
whatever. Yeah, like,
Sure.
yeah.
Mhm. Yep. I still deal with a lot of those types of reports.
Yeah.
The other thing too is we still deal with, folks mailing us data
Yeah.
in the occasional instance. So even someone moving to the cloud, some of our customers are not on the cloud yet. And that's okay. Again, we meet you where you're at. We want to start meeting you where you're at today so that we can work with you through some of these cumbersome transitions. I can't give you a pinpoint of how much time it takes, but one of
Yeah.
our utilities, for example, we're working with them. They have data sets that they've collected dating back to like 2005. And so we're analyzing their data sets today. The data sets from 2005 are all helicopter based. They've now fully moved to a comprehensive drone program. And what we're doing with them is over the course of, a month or 2 months, we're taking all of those data sets that they have, and we're actually just looking at which ones are viable for them to store, analyze, and map because some may be more valuable than others. And so we're taking in all that pre-existing data, but we're also triaging it to help them understand what they may want to store and what may not be as valuable. For example, if the data doesn't have location information, it's not helpful to upload it and analyze it if we can't tag it to a specific asset.
Mhm.
So being able to identify, okay, what's all the metadata tied with this asset itself, with these images themselves? Can we actually identify and pinpoint which tower or pole it's located on? Will help us, inform us whether we want to store that data or not. Because if it's just a raw image with no metadata, we don't know where the structure is located, there's very little insight they can continue to glean from it, especially since it's over 20 years old.
No, that makes sense. And I know as well, you mentioned before when we are on the pre-call that you do still very much stay in the operational weeds of things. So I'm curious, like, what made you decide to stay so connected to operations, even as CEO?
I think it's where the business is at today. Again, we're in such a inflection point of growth right now, and so there's so much changing so quickly. We've doubled our team size in the last year, and as such, we're putting in a lot more process, a lot more operational efficiencies that we're trying to deploy today. So I think it's important that I stay closely involved to those today so that we can make the right decisions to set us up for scaling. I fully trust my team and I have amazing people in the seats who are overseeing their different departments, but I like to just be a collaborator and a sounding board as we're looking to implement some of these more scalable practices. I don't think I'll always be as, deeply in the operational weeds as I am today, but I think it's important that the people on my team know that I'm here as a resource to roll up my sleeves and get in the trenches with them because we are at a point where we all need to be getting in the trenches to help support our customers on the front lines. And we're also very resource limited as a team. So I am not in any way above getting in to, help build the marketing materials, push out the final deliverables, pack and box shirts so that we can make sure they get to the customers when they first signed with us. Like, those types of things. I want my team to know that, we're all here to help further the business at the end of the day. And we're all working on the same team. And so it's not the success of one, it's the success of all of us. And so I think that's important for the team to see as well.
Hey everyone, it's Carly. So if this conversation is really hitting home and you want to get a real snapshot of what's working and what's not in your business, head on over to my website in the tools and tips section and you can have the business performance health check. In just about 15 minutes, you're going to see where the friction is and where your next growth opportunity lies within your company. I love that. And I'm curious too, like, as you look at your role in the future, what would you say you'd love to do as the CEO of the company?
I love understanding where our customers and where our utility partners want to go in the next 3 to 5 years. And I love understanding how our solution can help them get there. And so I'd also love to see how they can track value of our solution over time. And so I see myself continuing to stay very closely involved with, our customers, our users, as they're thinking about what's possible with AI and what's possible as they're deploying a solution like ours at scale. And then I like to make sure that they're seeing the most value and benefit from it. And so we know today that we are just scratching the surface of what's possible, not only in the utility space, but in many types of energy infrastructure. And so I'd like to be involved in the directional, strategic vision of where that's going.
Exciting. I'm curious too, because you did mention you guys do have a long-term vision. What is that long-term vision? What does that look like for you?
We want to work with many different types of traditional infrastructure as it's, going through the same types of challenges that we're facing in the electric utility space today. There are many other traditional types of infrastructure that have very similar, manual process, high risk industries where they're starting to collect a lot more data and they're not able to make the most of it. They're not able to see the value of it. And so they're not able to make the most informed operational decisions. So our goal is that we can help be that insights engine to help drive many of these traditional sectors forward.
Cool. And operationally, what would you say as you look at where you guys are now today and where you want to go in the future? What would you say is maybe one of the biggest gaps that you have to get to that point?
Oh, good question. I think overcoming some of the data siloing is one of those things. There's so much operational value and efficiency that we can help create for our customers and our partners when we're able to get access to those data sets and we're able to bring those together. And many of our customers are collecting data across so many siloed different departments. Our ability to help bring those together to help drive more informed data-driven decision making is going to be a huge unlock. And so I think for us, it's staying close to those folks to help them even just break down some of those small data siloing barriers so they can get those wins is going to help compound the value that they're able to see. So I'm personally very passionate about that and would like to continue to help create a process or a framework where our customers can do that because that's I think where they're going to see the most operational efficiency gains.
That's cool. And as you guys have scaled as well, and I know as it grows, the complexity of the company grows. So what would you say are maybe some of the things about how the company operated that you had to let go of as you moved into a larger team, larger roles?
Ooh, that's a good question as well. I think it's the prioritization piece. eh, there's a disconnect between what our utility partners are asking for today and what's the art of the possible with AI. And so I think it's how can we continually bridge that gap as a team to say we're thinking about next iteration of what's possible with AI, what's possible with innovation. But again, we have to meet our customers where they're at. It goes into prioritization of where we're focusing our engineering resources, our project management resources, our implementation resources to make sure we're solving the critical pain point of what our customers need today. And so there's a lot of time that we spend, brainstorming, hey, we could do all of these different things, but we need to meet the customer where they're at today to solve their critical pain point. And so that's always a give and take here at Buzz, especially as an AI company, is we constantly want to push the bounds of innovation. And so for me, it's always thinking, okay, what's the framework in where we can continue to foster a really innovative forward-looking culture while also making sure we're addressing the pain points that need to be solved today.
Nice. And I'm curious through like KPIs, right? Like I love they're so fun. I really like 'em. What are some of your favorite ones that you guys track in the company?
Oh, that's a good question. There's so many that we're tracking. We're a data
I
company,
imagine.
so
I know. I'm
we
like, they
love
probably
data.
have a ton.
I personally love data. I love KPIs. I think they're great to
Oh.
track. I think it's to see the customers that are continuing to grow with us. That's something that
Yep.
makes me really excited because that means we're doing something right. If our utilities are continuing to lean in with us and want to grow with us and want to not only grow, the amount that they're investing with Buzz, but also if they want to grow the use cases with us, they want us to become more integrated and more involved in their daily operations. I think that's the most exciting to see. That and then the other one is just me personally. I also want to make sure that all the people that work here at Buzz feel incredibly fulfilled. I mean,
Mm,
I want them to feel like they're continuing to grow, professionally and personally, and they see themselves continuing to grow with us here, and they feel fulfilled by the work that they're doing. So I'd say the one for me is externally focusing on making sure our customers and our partners are seeing the most value and wanting to grow with us, and then the same internally for my team here.
yeah, I love that. Well, it sounds like it's a lot about people for you, right? Like
Yes.
huge, yeah, huge
Very,
amount.
very people driven. I mean, the work of what we're doing is all in the physical world today. All the even though we're an AI company and we're dealing with, so much work digitally, the end results is all in the physical world. And so it's all people driven. I mean, reducing risk, improving safety is all about keeping the person, human centric approach.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know that this is also to make sure that they're not doing so much reactive responding, right? So these utility companies are very reactive in responses, but more predictive. How long does it usually take for that to get into place after implementing the solution?
That varies heavily based off a
Yeah.
couple of different factors, but the more we're working with utilities in one particular region with similar types of assets, we can leverage, the insights and understanding of what we have about that particular region to help start with a more, I guess, informed approach. So let's say we're working in the southeast and we know what the storm profile looks like, the vegetation growth looks like, the rates of failure of the assets based off some of the conditions in that area. We can start on day one by saying, well, here's our background knowledge of what we have of assets that are like this in this particular territory. We'll have to, of course, take time to understand how your specific assets are performing based off things like their load, the stress, the strain, the EVs on board, the electrification. But we are at least starting with a higher baseline knowledge.
Yeah.
Separate from that, it also depends on how much consistent data the utility is collecting. Are they
Mm,
collecting data once every 5 years? Are they collecting data every 3 years, every year? Of course, that can also accelerate the timeline as well. And then the last piece is it depends on asset type. I mean, some of these assets fail over a 40, 50, 75-year period of time, whereas others may fail much faster. And so being able to understand where the asset's at in its life cycle, what has been the historical exposure of that, can we get historical data sets, gives us more of an informed starting point as opposed to, starting fresh with no asset history.
And do you find after you guys start working with these utility companies and the longer term relationships, are they starting to collect more data? Are they more basically inspired to do that, just seeing what they can do with it?
Absolutely. I mean, one of our customers in the Southeast, they said that without Buzz, they had 17 steps from image snapshot to drafting of the report. And that meant that because it took them 17 steps, they were only collecting an image every time they saw a defect, which meant
Mhm.
they weren't collecting images of all the good assets, meaning they weren't tracking the trends over time of how those assets were performing. With Buzz, we're now enabling them to collect images of every asset, of every structure, of every component, because that whole piece, that whole 17 steps is automated. So they can
Mhm.
focus on scaling the inspection program, driving actionable insights instead of manually going through 17 steps from image collection to analysis.
Yeah, that's cool though too, because I imagine that's even like a big cost saver in the future. Because if they're not even able to analyze, where they're getting these assets from, all the different materials, what's working, what's not
Right.
working, like how do you even know if you can't
Absolutely.
track it? Yeah.
Absolutely, and so that's where we're actually starting with a lot of our customers too, is we're helping them inventory all the assets they have on their systems today. We're tracking rates of failure per year of those different types of assets. And where that becomes valuable and important is think about the supply chain issues. I
Yeah.
mean, transformers, for example, have had 3 to 5 year lead times. If you don't know what rates your transformers are failing at, or you don't even know where all your transformers of each type are deployed, how can you more effectively, purchase multiple years in advance?
Yeah.
Today, or historically, it's all been just based off past rates of asset failures. The problem is we're seeing record load growth. We're seeing increasing weather related risk on the assets. We're seeing increasing demand through electrification, EVs, all those types of things, which is
Mhm.
causing assets to fail at unprecedented rates. So we no longer can rely on all this historical data to be an accurate forecasting of how the assets are going to fail. So our solution helps them get a more proactive decision making to say, okay, we know how many we have, insulators, transformers, poles, whatever it may be. We have the last couple of years of asset failure data, and we know which assets are already starting to show early signs of failing so that we
Mhm.
can proactively purchase that equipment.
That's very cool. I'm curious as well when we think about Buzz as a company, what would you say that the industry most misunderstands about maybe what you guys do, how they help?
I love this question. You don't have to collect new data to deploy our solution. We want to meet you where you're at. We want to work with the pre-existing data. That's why our algorithms are pre-trained. We have pre-trained algorithms that can work with many utilities' historical data sets. So I oftentimes hear from utilities, "Oh, I don't have good quality data." Well, that good quality is a relative term, but what is
Mm,
data that we can actually derive value from? More often than not, we can derive value from some element of that data, so it's worth getting started. You don't have to wait till you have perfect data to get started. And that's, I think, a common misconception in this space. It's, something we spend a lot of time educating utilities on is let's start with what you have. Let's start to get value from that data, and then we can help position you to collect more efficient, more effective data going forward. So I think it's just a reframing of what's required to be able to get started.
yeah, that's interesting because I mean, my first thought was if you have old data, that's awesome. Like
Yeah,
that would be the best. You don't
absolutely.
have to have it fresh. The fresh stuff will be you guys saying like, this was amazing. Let's do this in a little bit of an upgraded way to
Mhm.
enhance the data.
Absolutely, but I
Yeah.
can't tell you the number of conversations I have with utilities where they say, "Oh, I don't have good enough quality data." It's saying, "Okay, well, let's work with what you have. Let's try to get some value from it, and then we can work on refining that data collection process going forward."
Yeah, because are there really any utility companies that genuinely don't have enough data?
think that depends on who you ask.
Yeah. It's kind of
I
rare.
think
I can't even imagine because they have to be tracking it in some way, shape, or form.
I think there are many utilities that
Mhm.
want to move to getting more consistent data sets year over year.
Yeah.
And so for them, it's not, do we have enough? It's, are we getting the right data? Are we getting the data that's going to help make the informed decisions? And I'd say many utilities probably don't think they have that type of data readily at their disposal. Or if they are collecting those data sets, they may not be accessible by all the right teams at the utility.
Mhm.
And so that goes back to the data siloing pieces. You may have a distribution pole, let's say one of the city lines. There may be 3 or 4 departments at the utility who inspect that pole for different purposes, different reasons. But I can't tell you the number of conversations I have with utilities where those 3 or 4 departments, none of them have access to the data sets from the other departments, even though it
Yeah.
could be of the same asset. So how can we, of course, in a cyber secure way, make sure that we're enabling more effective data storage so that those different departments can get access to the insights they need, the images they need, so that they don't have to send another truck all the way out to the field to be able to go inspect that asset again.
Yeah, so you guys do a lot of, it sounds like, just beyond the customer service, it's a lot of partnership dynamic with these companies to
Mhm.
help them bring all the information together and understand not just how to use what they have, but really, it sounds like sometimes what they have.
Absolutely. We want them
Mhm.
to maximize the value of the investment they've already made to collect the data. And oftentimes I receive data that's been stored on a hard drive in someone's desk, or it's, been stored in one cloud storage bucket, never to be seen again. Again, we want to meet them where they're at. We want to partner with them. We want to help them see value from the investment they've already made.
That's awesome. Yeah. We are out of time. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for coming today, sharing everything. If people want to find out more about you, Buzz Solutions, where should they go?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation. People can find us on our LinkedIn, which is Buzz Solutions. They can find us on our website, buzzsolutions.co, or they can find me on LinkedIn as well, Kaitlyn Albertoli. Would love to connect and swap ideas about the industry.
Yeah, and I'll be sure to put the information in the show notes too, just in case anyone missed it. And if you like the conversation, if you were inspired by it, feel free to share it with someone who you also think might be inspired by it. And thank you again for coming, Caitlin. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.